Hello, everyone. Welcome to a cover analysis of the most recent fan faction tournament, the Root and Branch tournament. This was a fun one. I'm here with my friend KJ today, and we're going to be covering some of the results from all of the matches played in this tournament. So, in case you didn't know, Root and Branch tournament had 5 leagues with 5 players each, so a total of 25 players, people from all over the world. And what the format was, it was 5 weeks of 4-player games with 1 player sitting out for each game, and then the last 2 were 5-player games with everyone, and whoever accumulated the most points moved on to the finals. I was in Group E, and I moved on to the finals. You know, what other outcome was possible? And yeah. So.
Pompous, I see.
Very pompous, no. It was actually pretty hard, and I definitely struggled at the beginning, because there were all these fan factions. So that how it was, you know, with Root, as of today, has 10 official factions, because the bats and the frogs are not quite out yet. But yeah, and
They're just not out. It's not a quite situation.
I mean, the Kickstarter is like a thing that's, you know, coming.
Yeah, but they haven't already shipped out any early access versions of it or anything.
I think there is an early access version with the rats and badgers, but that's up to a lot of change, and we don't know if that's what the final product's going to look like. But anyways, at the moment, we also have 8 fan factions, and I think I'm just going to real quickly go over each of the fan factions. KJ, I think you were here with me a lot when I went over some of the fan factions.
Yeah, I was here for the Noxious Battery, the Black Paw Bandits, and I think I got to listen to... Who was the last one? It wasn't Warriors Wake, was it? No, it was the Lemming Reaver.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll just cover real quick. So I'm going to assume that people watching this video know what the 10 base factions are, because, and their deal is. If not, there's other resources. But all right. Yeah, so here we got the Lemming Reavers. The Lemming Reavers are a militant faction. They're pretty cool. What their main thing is they gotta throw these things called caches everywhere. And they have to go scavenge for them and pick them up basically, and then it improves their game engine and lets them do more stuff. They're very they have a tendency of just filling the map, so it's kind of challenging to they don't, you can't be contained with them, because you're basically you're forced to just constantly be expanding, and you can't completely abandon clearings that you were in. Yeah. Then the Warriors Wake, I never got to play with them, unfortunately. So I don't really know too much how they work, but their main thing is they thrive off of combat. So anytime there's a battle and warriors get removed from the map and they don't have pieces there, they get to spawn pieces in there, because they're vultures coming to eat the dead bodies. And when they battle people, it goes into their they store warriors basically, and can spend them for actions, which is very interesting. And they can put this block people from placing stuff. The Blackguard got they got a lot of love, but they kind of underperformed in this tournament. We'll see that later. But their whole thing is they're weird. They are very turtley as a faction. So they kind of like to get set up, have their cells out, and they score 4 points a turn basically. And it's kind of like the lizards, where their scoring is very linear and constant, and so once they get set up of scoring 4 points a turn, the table has to work together to kind of stop them. But usually you gotta, once you knock them down, it's very hard for them to recover. So for them, it's about timing when you start your game engine. Host of Light, they're fun. They work a lot like the rats, where they score points if people aren't in their clearings. But unlike the rats, it has to be that there's no pieces in your clearing at the bird song, instead of evening. So it's for me, just it's the rats, but harder. Um, Noxious Battery, they're the skunks. They have this big cannon that they carry around. It's like a landmark, and they just like shoot the cannon at clearings. So like they care about like positioning and like getting next to a big clearing to keep the so factions that like to be scattered across the map are going to do well against the Noxious Battery or like have the power to come in and like destroy the cannon. But factions that like to cluster up like the cats should struggle against them. Ermine, they're fun. They're like a quest group. You have this like deck of cards that gives you objectives, and you get like points for doing the objectives, and you have to have like people have to reveal their cards at your birdsong, and you do actions based off like the cards are revealed. They're very fun. Blackpaw Bandits are another one where they're like, to me they feel like lizards a lot, because definitely I feel like they were inspired by lizards, because their whole thing is they have like cards and they have to reveal the cards to do certain actions, and like their scoring is also like very like in the face. Like they go and kidnap warriors and bring those warriors into a forest, and they score 2 points per warrior. So like they get points by killing warriors and then having those warriors like released in the forest if they have like a hideout there. The Chameleander, he's a pawn, like the Vagabond, so single pawn faction. Kind of works like the Vagabond, not really. Instead of doing quest, he's on a case to increase his ego by like doing things for other people and like doing stuff that like promotes his notoriety and like presence in the woodland. So yeah, that is a brief overview of all of the factions. Any impressions? Did you see any of these factions? You're like, wow, this would be like really weak against a faction or like really strong against another.
Keep it 100. I'm at 200. I'm gonna keep it 300 with you here. I started looking at a YouTube video.
That is completely understandable. But yeah, regardless, we have 8 fan factions. We have 6 fan maps. And I wanted to take your attention to this map. Do you see this map, George?
I'm sorry, did you say George or Gorge?
I said George, but it's supposed to be Gorge.
Okay. All right. George. Got it.
Fun fact is apparently the next map that comes with the next route expansion is inspired off of this, or is like going to be similar to this.
I would say I don't think you say inspired off of unless you're saying that they knew about this fan map before they made the route expansion. But I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, so it's this map is so funny to like set up like the militant faction for, because like if you put a guy there, it's like basically every clearing is within the 2. Like I in my game, like I set up here, and then like the next guy that picked a militant faction, like I think his only legal spot was like in this corner. It's just so weird having edge clearings adjacent to each other. But like
yeah, I've seen that now. That's horrible.
It's the strategy of setting up on this map is kind of crazy. Oh, and in this tournament there was a fan deck. It was the Dawn and Dusk deck, which is pretty fun to play with. I won my game
like
because
never mind. That is not the Exiles and the Partisans. There's a tree there.
No, yeah, we got Exiles and Partisans here, and then a Dawn and Dusk deck here.
Got it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna search through it. I'm sorry, Breaking Dawn does what?
Wait, pull it out.
Are you kidding me? And it's so cheap.
Yeah, but so yeah, someone in one of my games, the host of Light crafted this like turn 2 and had like 6 warriors on it when it popped it and got 6 points. But there's spoils in the deck, so like if someone has a like really powerful card, you don't have to like in the Exiles and Partisans you have to craft Saboteurs and then play it. But spoil is you just play it from your hand. But if they have a spoil,
well, thank God there's something to balance it.
This was my league. League E. League E was where it was at. I'm telling you. I ended up skating by with 19 league points, and clenching it. So this is like what the games looks like. So we have, just standard report. We reported person, faction, when your turn order was, and how many points you scored.
Wait, I'm sorry. Hold on. Was your name Jero Coverstein?
No, I'm Cosmic. I sat out this game.
Oh, okay.
See, that's me.
Got it.
Yeah. I want to... My big thing was game 3, picking the Vagrant Vagabond and getting last place, and then winning with the Vagrant Vagabond the next game.
What a boring pick, too. Just picking normal class.
Well, listen, I thought it was my best chances of winning. I mean, I was right the second time. Yeah, and then a big deciding game was this one. This was when I had my 16-point burst, and was very out of left field. And then this was the last game we played, and I played the Otters. I didn't do that good, but it doesn't matter. So anyways, so a lot of people. So this was done. I'll just zoom out a lot. Whoa. So a lot of people. There's a lot of games. There are 7 games from each league, so 7 times 5. There's 35 games.
Christ.
And that is a lot of faction interactions. So let me just zoom back in. So, something that I got. There's this guy in the who's also in the root. He did an analysis of looking at win rates for the different factions, and I'm just trying to find that name real quick. Yeah, WAD 90 CE VSP. But so what he did was he took basically took each faction and their points and the winners of each round basically, and made this little chart, which I thought was pretty cool. So here we see the win rate, how many times they play second, and their average points. So we get to see there's 18 factions, so there's you can think of it as a top 9 and bottom 9, or top 6, mid 6, and bottom 6. What shocked me is that how bad the Eerie did in this tournament. The Eerie got...
It kind of makes sense, though, that the Eerie does bad, though.
I disagree, because the Eerie is the consistency pick. They're known to be consistently good, top 3, top 4 in basically every tournament. And they maybe it was just they weren't used. Maybe you're right, where it's for Eerie you got to be good at policing the table and reading it for how your decree goes, and with so many fan factions that you're unfamiliar with, and you don't necessarily know how they work until you try going against them. You can really...
I was going to say, isn't the biggest thing for the Eerie, we have to, like you said, they're a consistent pick, but you have to also be a consistent player, and with new things affecting how everything goes, and if you forget how a specific interaction works, you put yourself in a hole.
Yeah, that makes sense. But something also would put it, the Woodland Alliance, look where they're at. They're also which, to be fair, in my group, there were a lot of games where the Woodland Alliance, they have an unchosen rate of 46%. Normally, Woodland Alliance always has the lowest unchosen percentage, but in this tournament, they had the highest unchosen percentage. And I think, in my group, my table talk was always, when I saw the Woodland Alliance in the draft, I didn't want them in the game because I didn't know how they would work with the other factions. So I would always say something like, oh man, I wouldn't want to play the Woodland Alliance because this faction gets an extra hit against other ones. Or oh, this one's really strong and could really police you. But I think a lot of the fan factions would have been strong against the Woodland Alliance. So, which is why they had such a high unchosen percentage rate, and they didn't perform
You're
like.
trying to take credit for the low unchosen rate because you happen to yap a bit in your
No,
games.
no. I'm just saying that I yapped in my games, and I think that's what happened in other people's games too.
Oh, you're just thinking like everyone kind of felt the same way.
I'm thinking that like people felt the same way that I did. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, that's fair, and you're probably right. It's like the difference between the Erie are gonna have it rough because they don't know how things are different, but the Woodlands realistically are gonna be fine because they don't give a crap if things are different.
Yeah.
Which also makes it very obvious why it looks like Vagabond has a ridiculously high win rate.
Yeah,
Because
I
they
mean,
just don't give a crap.
they only. I think the Vagabond's win rate is from poor sampling because they only showed up in 4 games.
Oh yeah, no, they were 33% unchosen. That's crazy.
And I will say that half of the Vagabond was me. I am responsible for this 25% fourth placement rate, and I'm responsible for half of the win rate. So, like, me alone it was half of the Vagabond games.
It was just like, oh, you should all be thanking me. I'm the reason this exists.
I'm the reason why the Vagabond's this high, because the other people would not have played the Vagrant in my games. It would have without me, Vagabond would have been chosen twice. They still would have had a 50% win rate though, so like maybe
Does it really matter?
Doesn't really matter. Did my actions really affect anything? Oh my
But
God.
anyway, you going.
Yeah, so I was very inspired by this graph, and I used kind of the Excel tricks that were here. I think mainly was this not count if. There was this like function that was like transpose that was pretty nice. But that was in beta. So anyways, so I took like a similar looking data where I took the data of games, faction, and the points scored. And I did manually just some of the points because they were like absent. So for example, in this tournament, a dominance win was considered 30 points, but a dominance loss was considered 10 points. So I like added that in. One joker reported that they scored 31 points, so I corrected that to 30 because like the tournament, because officially you can't score higher than 30 points in a route.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I took this data and I downloaded it as a CSV, and then I put it into Python. So
Got that Python practice. Let's go.
Python practice. Let's go. Python rep using Jupyter Labs online. So yeah, this is some pretty standard Python coding, except for the mid part you're about to see. So first, we import all of our functions. Then I read the wins by games, that little thing that I made, and there it is. This is how it looks in Python as a pandas data frame. Very cool. Then I read in the results that my good friend created and shared with me. I was just using that for ordering of the factions to keep it consistent. We'll see that later. So I create 2 variables. I create a factions variable using the just taking there was a fly that just flew by. And I also created a games variable that was just keeping track of all the games. Now, for this, you're probably gonna clown me on this. I spent 2 hours trying to figure out how to create a list of the games, and I could not figure it out for the life of me.
Oh no.
So I did this manually.
You poor thing.
Later I figured it out. Later I figured out how to do it, but I don't feel like recoding this because all of my following code is based off of this. So if I change this, I have to change everything. So I don't really feel like doing that. But anyways, yeah. So we have a list of all the games. So now what I did was I want to create a list that has a faction and their score. So this does that. So it puts it in each game. So like for example, in game 111, we have Corvid scoring 30, Ermine scoring 22, Blackguard scoring 15, Cats scoring 10. And this is for every game, basically. Hooray.
Hooray.
Then I created a faction. Then I created this like list of pairs, which showed like basically if the factions played each other, make it a variable. So this is what it looks like. It has the faction and the faction it played against, and these are unique, which is cool.
That's insane.
Yeah. Then
you did all of this.
Then I wanted to attach pair scores. So this little, I don't know if I'll do it again. Oh, I did it again. My bad. So it will attach the score of each like session, and I accidentally ran this code twice, so it's going to be like double, but that's okay because like the score averages it anyways. Then I said for each faction pair, take the average score. And hilariously, you may notice that there's a faction called the Blackguard and the Blackpaw Bandits.
Oh no.
I originally had this indexed at 6, which counted both of those as being the same faction. So I had to redo my analysis after I realized that. It was so funny.
Okay.
So
keep going.
Yeah. So this basically, it creates an array of all of the scores, and I said if they were like the same faction, count it as like -100. But if it was they never showed up against each other, count it as -200. And then here's this variable called abbreviate the factions, and then this is what the data table looks like, where it's basically each row is the faction, and then each value in this is how they performed against each respective column faction. Yeah, and then let's make it pretty. Let's make it look like how it should. So if it's the same faction, it'll just be counted as same. If they never fought each other, I just said no H2H, which means no head-to-head. And then we save this CSV. And yeah, that is my Python coding.
Go ahead, keep explaining. I'll be right back.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. Okay, cool. So, what do I do with that? So we come back to Excel, because I import the data frame, and we see it here in the docs. Yeah, and then what I did basically was I made it pretty, where for each faction in this each row, I sorted all of the scores, so it'd go from lowest to highest.
I had to walk away because I had to handle something, but I'm understanding that this right here seems to be like the matchups between each other faction.
Yeah, so what I did
I'm guessing negative numbers pretty much means what?
A negative. So a negative number means that on average, this faction in the A column scored that many less points than a faction in each header.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. They scored that many less points.
Yes.
Against that faction on average.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. Cool. Got it. And then
So I made Monopoly cards summarizing this. So this is summarizing the table. I like how these look like Monopoly cards. Because I don't know, that's what they remind me of for some reason. Yeah, so we see the Vagabond. They didn't get a lot of games, but they did really well against the Eerie, but struggled against the Lemmings. We can kind of follow that with each faction, such as the Skunks here, the Noxious Battery. They did really good against the Crows, and they got destroyed by the Rats and Moles. And Host of Light, they were weak against, which, kind of makes sense because
of the
military factions that can come in and swing hard when they need to.
Yeah, fair, actually. Yeah, fair.
Yeah. I thought this was interesting because, there's a lot of conventions, the Lord of the Hundreds. We see, the Lord of the Hundreds does really well against the Woodland Alliance, because they can just like come in and like wreck their shit. You know, the Lord of the Hundreds is known as like the Woodland Alliance policer, because if they need to, they can just come in with what's it called? It's not Rowdy. It's what's the one that lets you get an extra hit in battle?
Wrathful?
Yeah, Wrathful.
Yeah.
But the Lord of the Hundreds really struggles against the Vultures, because the Vultures' whole thing is if there are battles, they benefit from it. So, if the Lord of the Hundreds is going around clearing out oppression, the Vultures just appear, and that's really annoying for them. But some interesting things I thought was like, the Riverfolk and cats interaction is always like, oh, Riverfolk like cats being in a game, but in this tournament, the Riverfolk scored on average 13 less points than the cats. So I thought that was pretty cool. But yeah, so I could go through all these. I will put this a link to this in the like Discord in case you want to look at it. This is probably more like a data presenting view. It gets everything, but I thought it was interesting to see what is like the 4 weakest factions for each one and the 4 strongest competitors. So I made this.
Yep, it's one of them tables that you sat there and did for way too long.
Way too long. But it's done. Okay. Man. Alright, now this is where the yap session truly begins, because I'm going to go through it like kind of one by one and try to explain like what happened with each one. This is going to conclude part 1. I will be putting in the description like links to both of these charts in case you're interested in learning it. Part 2, I think I'm going to really sit down with this one and go through each one. So we have 3 sections here. I would say we have the top 6 performing factions, and these are in the order of the other table by win rate, basically. So these 6 factions here are in the top 6 based off of a win rate. These 6 are in the middle 6 based off of a win rate. And then, these 6 are in the bottom 6. Crows makes sense to see them here. And like I said earlier, I'm shocked by seeing the Woodland Alliance here, and I'm shocked by seeing the Eerie here. But I think I know. Next part, I'm going to be going down row by row, covering why I think each faction fared, like how they fared against the others based off of point differences alone. I have to keep in mind that we don't really have a lot of data for this. We only have 35 games. So there are examples of like a number being like way too high just because of like a random event in that game. Maybe something horrible happened. I think the reason why the Eerie are so underperforming is because like they just blundered in certain games, and we're going to be seeing that. But yeah, I think that will finish part 1. Stay tuned for part 2.
Part 1.
Woo, part 1.
Come back for part 2. Part 2, he sits there and yaps forever about Root. If you like Root, come back.